Welcome to Skip the Queue, a podcast for people working in or working with visitor attractions. I'm your host, Kelly Molson. Each episode, I speak with industry experts from the attractions world. In today's episode, I speak with Wes Smart, Managing Director of Harbour Park, the children's beach adventure. We discuss operating within the current restrictions, the importance of communicating with their team, and their big plans for the future. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and all the usual channels by searching Skip the Queue. Wes, it's really great to have you on the podcast today. So thank you so much for being on.
Pleasure.
I always like to start the interview with a few icebreaker questions, and you don't get to prepare anything for these questions. But it's just to get to know the real you, because we haven't actually spoken before, have we? This is the first interaction that we've had. So, do you prefer cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Any reasoning behind that? I mean, it is the correct answer, obviously.
Grew up more around dogs. I don't have one currently, but yeah. So it was more growing up and more familiarity, I guess. I'm not against cats.
I'm not against cats, Wes, but they're just not that pleasant all the time, are they? Not really. I'm going to alienate a huge part of my audience here.
You will, and I'm going to help you by saying I look at it as a cat as a squatter. So.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think you're probably right there. If you don't have a dog, I have two, and I'm always willing to get rid of at least one of mine at any one time.
I would have to check with that.
Okay, so what would be top of your bucket list? What's top of the list for you?
My wife does know how to dive, and I've not got an open water or anything like that. So some experience inside of diving might be something I put out there as on the bucket list.
Oh yeah. Have you done snorkeling before? So
yeah,
you've done that first step.
Snorkeling. I've even used an air tank in the swimming pool and things like that, but I've not got open water, and I've never been on a reef dive, and so yeah, I would like to. Maybe I'd like to do that before I kick the bucket.
Where would you choose to go and do that?
Belize.
Oh yeah. Very nice. I've not been
everywhere. My wife's done the Barrier Reef, so I'd rather go somewhere where she's not been before and learn out there. And I've been to Belize, and it's fantastic, but I never went diving there. I know it's meant to be excellent.
Good answer. Okay, this is the last icebreaker question, and I think it's the toughest one. So I want you to tell me something that you believe to be true, but hardly anyone else agrees with you on. So it's basically your unpopular opinion.
Eggs belong in burgers.
Eggs belong in burgers?
Runny yolk belongs in a burger.
Wow. Do you know what? I don't think that I've ever had an egg in a burger. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm totally with you on a runny egg in a bacon sarnie. Delicious.
So add a burger into the bacon sarnie, and you've got a bacon egg cheeseburger.
With cheese as well, though.
With cheese, yeah.
Yeah.
Go big or go home.
I mean, that's my life motto, Wes. Brilliant. Well, that's a great start to the podcast, Wes. Thank you for answering my ridiculous questions. I'd love to know a little bit about your background, and have you always been involved in the attractions world, or is this something that's quite new?
No, I'm fourth generation entertainment. The big man behind me is my great-grandfather.
Oh, wow. I mean, he's fabulous. Look at that. Look at that photo.
He's Billy Smart. He was a circus impresario in the UK.
Oh, wow.
Billy Smart Circus toured in the after the Second World War, mainly the 50s, 60s kind of times and all that. So that's the family history. It was circus and entertainment. So amusement parks and fairground equipment, and it's not such a far-flung attitude. So historically, my family's been in entertainment. I have done other things. So, I went off and I'm a veteran. So I was in the military for a while. And then I've come back into the business. So yes, summers from university were spent as an attraction attendant and ice cream puller, and a program seller when circus was still out and about as a young teen. Popcorn making. Yeah. So I've done the whole kit and caboodle at the entry level and everything like that. And then I went off and I did other things with the military, and then I came back in and started back in as the rides manager, and then promoted up through to operations, and now I'm managing director. So
I love that you have worked at every level of that, of the business, because that must give you such an insight into what it's like for your team, the visitors.
Yeah, it's really helpful trying to deliver a consistent experience for the guest through training, managing training regimes and sort of that coaching technique that you use with sort of younger managers who are coming through, and you see them, so you are able to see the mistakes before they come and go and talk it through so they can see it coming. So that I think that experience helps. I love the stories from the guys who, I like hearing about the guys who used to run Disney back in the day, who started on Main Street, and you've got a lot of American parks. Huge amount of parks out there who you speak to, whose people have come up through and know the intricacies. And I know when even Universal's guy walks through the park every Saturday and will make notes and everything like that, because he did the experience. It's not essential, don't get me wrong, it's not essential, but there's certainly a value to having been at the entry level and then at the mid-management level, with dealing with your staff and having sympathies for some of the pressures that come, and the amount of left field stuff where that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. We have got one of the guests on the podcast for this season is Lee Cockerell, who was the ex-VP of operations at Disney World, and he does talk a lot about being front and center all the time, so being available to his team, so making sure that he was visible. And I think it's very similar. He didn't work all the way up like you have, but still that visibility and making sure that he understood everything that was going on at the park at any one time is ultimately what's important about building trust and making people know that you are someone that they can come to for leadership and support.
I think size of operation, the size of park I run allows me to have a bit more granular knowledge of roles, but it's not essential in a larger organisation, and you can't know everybody's job, and that's then about building teams and building trust and delivering expectations. And we used to talk about we talk about end states, and so that people, this is where I want to be. The route is your choice, but this is where I want to be, so that actually it allows for creativity inside of the train tracks and a bit of freedom and ownership of tasks. And that's the kind of stuff we talk about now. It's like, okay, I want to be there. And in this time now, that's proving to be far more successful in saying, this is where I want to be. Let's come up with ideas. I don't mind being about a sounding board. I don't mind coming up with how I would do it, but change it. Yeah, take it, own it.
I love that.
Plan your work and then work the plan.
So plan your work the plan.
Your work, then work the plan.
That is great. I love that. Okay, that's a good quote for you. That'll be all across our social media, Wes. Tell us a little bit about the park and what the attraction's like, because you've got outdoor activities and indoor activities. So you've got some quite big challenges at the moment, I guess, with what's happening. But tell us a little bit about the park and what's there.
Okay, but so by amusement park standards, we're very small, relatively. We're probably about 16 to 20 attractions, depending on what you count as an attraction or a ride. We mainly mechanical or electromechanical rides. We focus on an age group of 2 to 12-year-olds, particularly, and anyone with responsibility for a 2 to 12-year-old. We are a seaside location, so we're highly seasonal. We have an indoor element as well as an outdoor element. We face both a river and the sea, so we only can attract from a 180-degree catchment area. There's some real challenges. The indoor elements at the moment are soft play, which I'm sure we'll come to later. Yeah. The arcades, so arcades are arcades, coin operated, and there's some interesting developments in that sphere about where things might go in the future. And then rides and food and beverage. So our top selling food and beverage item is fish and chips, unsurprisingly. Ice cream is our top selling snack item. That's how it works. It's a tight team, but the challenges of seasonality are something that we have to manage, and that's going to be very acute given the current situation.
Yeah, absolutely. We will come to that actually later on in the podcast. So how has lockdown been for you? I mean, it's a difficult question. It's a difficult question to ask because it's been so challenging for so many people. But I guess I kind of want to find out, what it was like for you when you heard the news that everything was going to have to close, and then what kind of things have you done while you've been closed to engage with the audience that you already have? I'm sure you've got loyal people that come back time and
Mhm.
time again.
So the close down, we could see the effects happening already. Literally across a 2-week period, what we would expect sort of dropped off a cliff. So we kind of already were looking commercially at what do we do, and we started to get soundings from our trade association, Balpa, that announcements were coming. So we had to make a decision to start to prepare for that in quite a serious way. So when the announcement on the Friday was made, we used the week we closed to the public immediately. But we then had to go through a process that never done at the park before, which was to winterize ourselves with we pushed our inspection regime for the rides so that we were all inspected, built, and ready to go with the rides. We then had to go through what we called mothballing, and we hadn't done it before. We pulled out the manuals for rides. We got all the arcade equipment empty because we then worried about vandalism. We worried about break-ins. We worried about insurance. We worried about water. We went through a whole list and then had to record the list because we knew we would want to turn it back on and didn't want to forget anything. So yeah, the organisation and making that happen over a 2-day period was a challenge, but with a mind to recovery, even at that early stage. It was the ability to say, we're going to turn all this back on, to make checklists, because I'm acutely aware there's no point me holding it all. There was no point in it relying on one person. You had to make the lists and then publish those lists to everyone so that people could move back in. What if I wasn't there? What if I'm sat in ICU?
Yeah.
What if the management, a lot of the management team are, it was reliant on a lot of people, and that was made quite aware to our staff in essential briefing that, at that time there was significant fear about it. But the fact was, we said very clearly that we were aiming to survive, and we set a date. We set a date for survival at that time to being Easter 2021. Right back in March 2020, that's what we said. That is the timescale we are setting over survival.
Wow.
Right at the outset. No one at that time knew how long it was going to last. No one at that time knew whether, and we still don't, whether you're going to end up with second waves, even third waves. Historic data would suggest we might. And those are the kind of things that we had to do to react to lockdown. Everyone reacted really well. Furlough was an experience. Yeah, that was hard. The staff were very good about it. We did communications you asked about, and the main audience we focused on was our staff, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Our external communications was very much, we're closed.
Yeah.
And as per government instructions, we're staying closed. We do have an annual pass scheme. So there was there was some discussion before we closed up shop about what we're going to do for those. And that during, I was on furlough for 3 weeks, and then we brought myself back and everything like that. So it was literally only the financiers who were running the payroll who we kept on for the first 3 weeks. After that, we brought myself and a couple back. That low level knowledge, was good because I was able to do a lot of the checks for insurance and that myself after that. So it was, there was a lot more hands on in the early part. And then later on, we started to drop in people coming back slowly, each outlets that faced out that we could use as takeaway and convert those quickly. We did that.
Oh, that's great. So you were able to adapt quite quickly then and open elements of what you were doing.
Yeah, certainly the catering side of things, we adapted things to be takeaway reasonably quickly when we were allowed to. We had to go through the whole COVID secure risk assessment. That was quite the effort. But as it was for everyone, everyone took different approaches. There's a lot of conflicting opinions. There were only so many Zoom calls that I would eventually go on. I had to limit and focus on the ones that I found most helpful. Mm-hmm. And actually, it came to making decisions. At some point, you got to stop the talking, and you've actually got to make a decision, and then evaluate that decision when it hits the hits the ground and the public get to have their opinion upon it. So it was what we call an OODA loop. It's that stands for something, but it stands for OODA: observe, orientate, decide, act. And the tighter you can make that loop, the faster you will affect the situation. They used to teach fighter pilots about, the faster you do that, if your circle is smaller than the other person's, you're now affecting them. And so you take that decision cycle in sometimes an 80% plan now is better than a 100% plan too late.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that was kind of the attitude we took. We started with gloves and napkins, and the public liked it. 2 weeks later, the public didn't like it, so we had to remove those and went to we were sanitizing over the top of gloves. Now we're sanitizing hands that are bare with food handling. It's learning and reacting all the time.
It's very difficult, isn't it? And we've had it in our own sector, which is very, very different in digital. People's needs and requirements are changing so rapidly that you can't you've got to evaluate constantly. So like you say, what a solution that worked a couple of weeks ago now isn't right for your audience. So now you have to change and adapt. And actually that in itself is quite exhausting, but it's testament to the speed and the ability of the team that you have there to be able to continuously do that so quickly and evaluate. What now you're open, we talked a little bit earlier about the kind of activities that you have on site. You've got outdoor activities and indoor activities. So what kind of restrictions are in place at the moment? The indoor is soft play, so unfortunately that stays closed for the foreseeable.
Yes.
What other challenges do you have in terms of the restrictions at the moment?
To be honest with you, with the fine weather, we've been managing on a capacity level that has worked for us. The number one thing that affects us still, as has been before COVID and will be after COVID, will be the weather. It is yes. The number one thing that affects us. While we've been dry every day, the management and the techniques has been probably 95% of what we planned has worked. So there's been the one time that we did have rain and people from the park tried to come into the buildings, that was a challenge because the building, we've rated the building for a certain occupancy level as well as the outdoor area. And so while the weather is dry, that's easily managed than what we found. The problem comes when people want to come inside all at once, and that's usually in a rain shower.
Right.
So we put our umbrellas up even on rainy days that we have for the seating. We try to not put the seating underneath so that you can fit more. So just to try to prevent a run for cover if we get a rain shower. That's probably been the number one big challenge. We've got different systems we've tried for it, and like you say, we're learning a lot with those. But we haven't reached capacity in the building even when we had the one rain shower. But it certainly taught us a lot about how we thought it would work and how it actually works. And like you say, that's the evaluation that has to happen.
Yeah.
And that's, I know other parks have got similar problems where they've got, their whole park has worked out for a capacity and they let the people in, but everyone wants to go to one land. Everyone wants to go to the one IP linked land first. So they're having to manage, although their park is at perfect capacity, no problems at all. The problem is that people want to go to one place at one time, and that's a different challenge I know that other parks have had as well. So
is that something that you don't struggle with that? So people don't tend to congregate in one, they don't go towards one ride specifically initially?
No, not unless we. The only challenge we get with that is weather related. But now that we know, you can predict that with a certain degree, 24 hours out. You know what you're looking for. You can prep your team in the morning. We now keep to one side sort of the shower reaction kit. It consists of a few fences and some signage, but it's still that kind of trying to manage flow.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered. I mean, obviously, I know that you have mixed spaces, indoor and outdoor, and I hadn't even considered the challenges of the weather being the biggest challenge. Because I guess in a normal circumstance, people would go, oh, well, it's raining. Oh, well, let's go to soft play then. We'll get everybody inside, and yeah, that's the challenge. And I guess that is, would your soft play areas usually be open in the winter months as well? So you would. Yes. You would get maybe more visitors into those areas than the outdoors at that point.
Yes, and that's, the planning element has moved on from opening now to winter. Soft play was the cool bird we close down the rides, we do our maintenance inspections across the winter, we do all our refurbs and everything like that. So that's planned and continued. The only disruptors we'll see there would be local lockdowns, second spikes, however you want to phrase it. But that's the kind of thing that we would look at for that. Inside, at the moment we are without the attraction that is the cool bird and the driver for children's parties, and so winter is a challenge. We've got a few ideas, and we've been muting through those, in the last week or two, and we'll adapt. It's as simple as that.
Adapt is the word of the year, isn't it? Without a doubt. I mean, that brings me to one of the questions actually about the COVID situation. And I guess that we've spoken to some people that have kind of said, oh, well, we'd been thinking about doing this thing for a couple of years. And actually the situation has meant we've had to kind of force it upon us. We've had to think more quickly and more rapidly and actually, bring that solution forward. Are you in that position where you've been thinking about some stuff for a while and now actually they're at the top of the list? They're things that you have to do because of the change in restrictions and what you can and can't, open with?
Yes, we did, but those decisions have already been made. For example, menu size. In the 2 sit-down restaurant catering outlets, I slashed the menu down to, I think, 5 or 6 items. We had a lot more than that. And it was just a decision. We've always been trying to trim the menu down each time we got the concept and that, but this just made us, it was an early decision. Like I said, the OODA loop was simple. We wanted to do this for ages. This is the time to make it happen. It made sense for not needing to recruit anymore. It made ease of training. If you had a cook or a chef go down, the training was simple. If you reduced the menu, stock ordering became simpler as long as you could, the amount of suppliers that you could, the range of suppliers you could go to for that short menu. So we made that decision in April, before we were allowed to open. It was, that was simple. And then that decision led on to, right, what do we need to do? We need to change the digital menus. We're not going to pay for signage and that. Let's see what, let's download PicMonkey and let's see what we can do. And okay, great. We can print A3. Brilliant. Let's laminate it. Let's stick that up instead. And, okay, that looks a bit shoddy. Let's redo that on a chalkboard format. Still printed, but that looks much better. Bang, up it goes. And but the decision being made early gave breathing space to make what the solution was look less temporary.
Yeah.
And gives you customer confidence with that professionalism that you would expect from coming to an establishment, and that I felt was important, because customer confidence was something that you couldn't control. All you could do was get your elements to look like you had thought about this properly as they would expect, and convey that through your presentation. I mean, that's what we do. You have to present things in a way that gives people confidence. And that was one of the big battles. But that all stemmed from making decisions early. And the menu is the easiest one I can use as an example of saying, we're slashing it.
Yeah.
We're going to Gordon Ramsay it. it's just come in and throw the toys out the pram and just go, your menu's too big. Okay. Yeah. I've watched enough Nightmare Chef back in the day to know that a slimmer menu is a more efficient menu.
Okay, we've Ramsayed the menu. I love this. So, and what about future plans? So you mentioned there's a few things that you're thinking of in terms of the winter months now. Is there anything that you're happy to share with us about things that you're thinking about that? Because that I can see what a big challenge that's going to be in terms of, you said it's a big driver for birthday parties. So essentially, that's something that you could lose for the rest of the year.
Right.
What kind of things are you thinking of in terms of new developments?
Well, we started with the starting point was what in winter are we going to open? So that we usually run what I call the main building that will stay open. The arcade inside there has been socially distanced, and we've done that already, and that's working. So that will stay. So we have an element of things that we can keep open. The soft play takes up a big space, and at the moment, there's no clue as to when that might open. So it's about using the seating space and converting that. Soft play's roped off. It's closed. We've cable tied everything shut. It's done. But as we come into winter, we need to look at the birthday party room. Can we repurpose it in some way? Is there a form of arcade attraction that we can put in there? Is there something that we can use that, we'll be very interested as the guidance towards schools starts to come out and seeing how schools are going to operate. Because if they're operating in class bubbles, that will give us a much closer clue as to what is permissible and what is acceptable to our audience as well, and legislatively as well. But I care more about the audience, to be honest with you. Legislation we just have to comply with. It's black and white, and the grey areas around it, you make decisions and you adjust. It's there's no specifics at the moment because I've got things going out to different people, and there might be 5 ideas out there, and one may only be the one that is economically feasible. But we're going through that now so that we can aim that come September we've got a decision and we can try to implement in September, ready for the October, November, December, January, February. It's a 5-month haul to get around.
Yeah, it is a long period, isn't it? And I guess it's great that you've got ideas about how you can use your space. And what I've really liked is that throughout this interview, you've been kind of really pushing that message that it is about your audience. It's really about, like, I've heard this phrase quite a lot, like sanitize the venue, but not the experience. Yeah, okay, there's these restrictions in place and there's the sanitization in place, but it's not kind of diluting that experience they're getting. And it's been really nice to hear you kind of say that all the way through. We're coming to the end of the podcast, and what I'd really like to know, there's a couple of questions that I'd still like to ask, but I'd really like to end on a positive. So do you think there's anything, and actually this is not just for you, for the park, but maybe for yourself as well, is there anything that has been kind of a positive aspect of lockdown for you?
Yes. Okay. There's a few different ones that I'll pick up on. For the business, I would say our team's reaction to coming back, although nervous, was excellent. Oh. And I take a bit of a pride in the fact that our people have come back and risen to challenges in the correct way, where they felt that there was holes, and you can't cover everything and that. So when they brought concerns up in the right way, we've adapted, we've used them and consulted with them about and their attitude hasn't been just not doing it. It's, what if we do it this way? What if we try to do that? And that's been really pleasing to see that buy-in. But I think that came from us focusing on staff as our communications lead early on. And the guests got told we're closed. We made a decision on annual passes and fed that out once we knew we'd be given a reopening date. So we stayed quiet to our guests. We weren't a zoo. We didn't put out educational packs and all that. All very good. If I ran a zoo, I'd 100% do that. But yeah, we focused on our staff, and I think that gave us our reopening with our staff. I take a pride in how they reacted to it all.
That's lovely.
And that's been pleasing to see. Personally, seeing my wife homeschool and how she threw herself into that was excellent. I was lucky I was able to help for the short time that I was at home and that. But that was pleasing to see. Not that it was easy by any stretch of the imagination.
I am sure.
But no, and the way my kids reacted to that was really interesting. So we learned a lot more of us as a family unit. So there was a lot of learning about each other done there, which ordinarily you wouldn't get, particularly in summer for myself, where it's our busiest time.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been around.
No, and that was, from a personal point of view, that was really, really good to see. So there's a lot of growth in knowledge, let's say. Not a lot of growth in the business.
Well, that's to come though. That's to come though, Wes. We love to end the podcast by asking if you have a book that you could recommend. So maybe something that has helped to shape your career, or just a book that you've just taken a lot from, and we offer that book as a prize for our listeners. Okay.
Winnie the Pooh by AML.
It's a great book.
It's fantastic.
Why have you chosen that book? It's a beautiful book.
Winnie the Pooh is my childhood hero, one. But as an adult, when you reread it, it's written. It's hard to read, actually, when you go back to it. It's written from the aspect of a child, obviously I'm in Sussex. It was written by Emil in Sussex, so there's a local link as well. But as a veteran, it says things about depression that are fantastic. Not that I don't suffer from PTSD and that, but I have many friends and colleagues, or ex-colleagues who do, and that, and what it says simply about that from the attitude of a child is fantastic. And in simple terms, it reminds you of what's important. It takes you back. Our audience are children, if you want to look at it from a business point of view, and the wonderment in simple things. And you don't have to, and that's why I've always said about digital, how important it is to certain aspects, but we're an analog park. And as digital becomes the main of what people do day to day, analog's going to be more important for experience. And it's not a surprise to me that adventure activities are growing. It does not surprise to me that the experience economy is a growth area, that, you know, that bars are turning into the kind of, you know, the prison themes and you know, these kind of things, because the more digital you have, the more experience and analog and shared experience particularly becomes important. And for a child, a walk in the woods is an experience. It's something that's different. And Winnie the Pooh brings you back. It grounds you. It makes decision making. It takes pressure off. It's a relief. So yeah, I'm not going to say a self-help book or an inspiring biography from someone. And you know, I've got inspiring people in front of me. You know, some of them are 16, 17, 18 years old and they're in their first job. I don't need that. I can see that where they work hard and they're learning something. It's, you know, so I need something to make the thought process simpler and the decision making less grand in my own head, you know, and Winnie the Pooh does that for me.
Oh, Wes, what a lovely, lovely end to our podcast interview, and what a wonderful book to recommend. If you'd like to win a copy of this book, then head over to our Twitter account, which is Skip the Queue. And if you retweet this episode announcement with the comment, "I want Wes's book," and then you will be in with a chance of winning it. Wes, thank you. It has been an absolute delight to speak to you today. I wish you all of the very best with the upcoming months that you've got ahead of you. But thank you.
No problems. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Skip the Queue. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find us. And remember to follow us on Twitter for your chance to win the books that have been mentioned. Skip the Queue is brought to you by Rubber Cheese, a digital agency that builds remarkable systems and websites for attractions that helps them increase their visitor numbers. You can find show notes and transcriptions from this episode and more over on our website, rubbercheese.com/podcast.